excited to be speaking with you this afternoon on a beautiful Colorado day. As Joel mentioned, I am a fellow at the Center for American Progress. For those of you who aren't familiar, that's an organization in Washington that seeks to develop progressive solutions to big challenges. And it's hard to imagine a bigger challenge than the one I want to talk to you about today, which is migration, and particular migration in the Americas. Has come to ironically from a candid and constructive conversation about what the real challenges our current migration dynamics pose to prosperity and stability in the Americas. So, with that in mind, I am going to walk you through a little bit of what migration looks like in the Americas today, what that means, and what we should do about it. And so I think a helpful place to start is with the question, is there a migration crisis in the Americas today? Those of you who follow the news or politics, I'm sure you've encountered at some point someone making the assertion that there's a migration crisis, probably in reference to what's happening at the U.S. southern border. But is that right? Well, yes and no. It depends on how you look at it. And here's one way to look at it. Immigration to the United States is at near historical lows. And one way of seeing that is with this chart, which reflects apprehensions by U.S. authorities of undocumented immigrants inside the United States. And you'll see from 2001 to 2018, the trend is pretty starkly down from about 1.6 million in 2001 down to around 350,000 in 2018. And that's mostly attributable to a decline in the number of Mexican nationals who are being apprehended. Other studies of this subject, for example, that have not looked at apprehensions, but just tried to get a sense of how many undocumented immigrants there are in this country, have also noticed or concluded that the population has declined. Again, mostly reflecting the decline in the number of Mexican nationals in the U.S. So the reasons for that change are complex. They have a lot to do with the 2008 recession and changes in the Mexican economy. But the bottom line is, immigration to the United States today is at completely manageable levels, and certainly compared to historical standards, is not in any way crisis. And it's certainly not in the raging, as some of our political inclined characterize it, often for their own political advantage. That's one way of looking at the issue. But there is another way, that instead of looking at the total numbers of people who are coming to the United States who are migrating to the Americas, looking at who is coming, what's their profile, why are they leaving home, and what's happening when they reach their country of destination along the way. And when you look at that question, you approach it from that perspective, the backgrounds of the people who are being apprehended by U.S. authorities over the past 6 years, you'll see that for single adults, most of them are male, I should clarify as well. There's been fluctuation within a normal range, but recently there's been a very sharp uptick in the number of families traveling together, and also on a very company children. And that has been paralleled by a broader development in the Americas, which is a dramatic increase in the number of refugees and asylum seekers from countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. For those of you who are familiar, just very quickly, refugees are people who have been forced to leave their country of residence or home because of violence or war or persecution. And so what we're seeing is that most of the refugees, there's a dramatic number of Latin American countries and also Haiti, and a number of asylum seekers. While these numbers are at the border, it's actually a regional phenomenon. While the U.S. has received the largest number of asylum seekers in absolute terms, other countries have received more as a percentage of their population. For example, Ecuador, Canada, and certain West Indian countries, while small, have received a number of asylum seekers that is staggering relative to their capacity to handle people And so, before I discuss the implications of this, I want to finally highlight the third, perhaps most troubling way to answer the question about whether there's a migration crisis in the Americas. It requires us to look a little further afield, but the implications could be profound for the whole region, including the United States. And that is the dramatic exodus of Venezuelans following the economic collapse and political turmoil in the country. I'm sure many of you in the room are familiar that Venezuela is in the midst of political crisis and is struggling economically. You may not have a sense of just how profound that's been, but just in the last 5 years, 4 million Venezuelans as of this summer had left home. Most of them have gone southwest through the Colombian border, some stayed there, and then others have gone further south into other South American countries. But for a country whose population is 28 million, 4 million people leaving is simply extraordinary. It's on par with the Syrian civil war. And it's had profound repercussions for the countries that are receiving Venezuelan migrants as well. So before I even move on to this, so what are the implications of this profound change in the kinds of people who are deciding to migrate? Well, what it means is that for the foreseeable future, people who decide to migrate to the Americas are more likely to be driven by fear and extreme deprivation than a generation ago, where they would be more likely to be seeking economic opportunity, be it a new life or be it seasonal work in various sectors of being forward. And that has some pretty great implications. For one, it creates a high likelihood of humanitarian crises. When people leave home without a clear vision for how they're going to support themselves or their families, they're very vulnerable. They're very easily exploited. And if they wind up in a host country or even in an intermediary country that lacks the political will or the capacity to process them and to hear their claims, if they're silenced in the appropriate way, it can lead to them being put in inhumane conditions with overcrowding and suffering any number of abuses. You're seeing that in the United States right now, but you're also seeing in other places in the region, for example, Brazil and other places where there's significant number of Venezuelan migrants. Another consequence is regional instability. When a lot of desperate people are on the move, it can unsettle the politics of neighboring countries and of the country from which they're leaving. So the most prominent example here is Colombia, where an influx of 2 million Venezuelans, and it could be as high as 3.5 by the end of the year, threatens to undermine a hard-fought peace after decades of civil unrest in the country. But there are other examples of political instability related to migration. Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and a number of other case studies that I'm happy to talk about after the presentation if you'd like. And then finally, it contributes to the growth of anti-immigrant and sentiment and places in the hands of right-wing populists and authoritarians. I don't think I need to illustrate how that's happened in this country, but suffice to say, the sort of demonization of immigrants is not unique to the United States, unfortunately. You're seeing it in Costa Rica, which has absorbed a lot of Nicaraguan migrants. You're seeing it in Ecuador and Peru, which initially received Venezuela with open arms, but then effectively public attitude soured not long thereafter. So, why is this happening? First off, it's important to say that migration is complex. Every decision to migrate is personal, deeply personal. It's not a light decision to leave home and those you know and love. That being said, there are 4 drivers that we mentioned in our report that I think are worth emphasizing here. One, and this may be the most important one, is violence, crime and violence. Latin America has the unfortunate distinction of being one of the world's most dangerous regions. It has 8% of the global population, but 40% of its homicides. It also is a terrible place to be a woman in some areas. Honduras, for example, has one of the highest rates of what's called femicide, which is when a woman is killed outside her home for gender-based reasons. Another reason, though, is economic deprivation and disruption of traditional lifestyles. So Venezuela's economy has collapsed. There's a lot of stagnation, particularly in the northern triangle of Central America. Not much opportunity, not much promise of any sort of growth in the future. And so there's accompanying hopelessness. And in particular, in places like the western islands of Guatemala, there's pervasive hunger. The third is climate change, and there have been a lot of great press in the New York Times and other places about how climate change is driving migration. Suffice to say, changing weather patterns are affecting many people's livelihoods, particularly traditional people living in indigenous communities with very traditional sort of land-based lifestyles that have been affected by crop failure, coffee rust, for example, in Guatemala and Honduras. And that is amplifying the economic pain that they are already feeling. And then finally, and this is, I think, an underrated driver, the corruption and indifference on the elites in these countries. Many of the elites in the countries that produce a lot of migrants, particularly asylum seekers, are captured by organized crime or clientelistic networks, and they really don't care much about how the bottom rung of their societies fare. In fact, on some level, they're not displeased to see them leave because they're no longer a problem. So with all that being said, I'll close by presenting at a very high level, what is good migration policy like, given those challenges? Well, first of all, you have to understand migration is a regional challenge. You're never going to fix these problems from behind a wall in Fortress America. You have to engage your partners. You have to recognize that they're the front lines of this challenge and that you need to invest in it. You need to make them more capable of addressing the drivers of migration. You also need to recognize that those drivers aren't going to disappear overnight, so you need to make them more capable of processing migrants in a humane and effective way. You also need to make direct investments through foreign assistance and other mechanisms in programs that have been shown to strengthen judicial systems, mitigate climate change, and other matters. This is something that the previous administration did a bit of. The current administration has slashed through the triangle, for example, by a third. And again, most important. Well, actually, before I close, I do want to say it's also important to not impose solutions, but rather collaborate with countries. I'm thinking specifically of the way the current administration has pressured Mexico, El Salvador, and Guatemala to hear its own countries rather than allow asylees to go to the United States where they want their claims to be heard. In addition to those countries not really have the capacity to do that, and some of them being dangerous in their own right, it's also forcing these countries to be. And so finally, an Untitled policy is one that's empathetic, that recognizes that migrants are human beings, that they deserve our compassion, that they have basic rights, and that they have something to contribute, and that immigration is as much of an opportunity as a challenge. And as we've seen in this country, in the past and hopefully in the future, immigrants have tremendous potential to revitalize and contribute to our culture and stimulate our economy. So with that, I will turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Trevor. And I want to invite our audience to begin thinking of your own questions that you may have for Trevor and our next presenter, because we will have a Q&A session at the end of our panel discussion. I would like to introduce our next presenter, Laura Collins. Laura serves as director at the Bush Institute SMU Economic Growth Initiative as part of the George W. Bush Institute. Collins previously served as the director of immigration policy at the American Action Forum. She has experience in politics, working as a senior research analyst at the Republican National Committee for the 2012 election cycle. She also worked at the Texas House of Representatives during the 82nd legislature. A former practicing attorney, Collins earned her JD from the University of Texas School of Law and her BA from the University of Oklahoma. Please welcome Laura Collins.
Okay, so take this off me. This is the problem. Okay, so at the Bush Institute, we believe in taking policy and developing leaders, fostering policy, and taking action to solve the good fortune of working on my favorite pressing challenge, which is immigration. We particularly if we change up the mix of how we're doing things right now. So we're going to talk a little bit today about what I think good immigration policy looks like. We've we're going to talk a little bit about how that interplays with a project that we do in Central America. But first, I'm going to give you just a good immigration facts, because Thanksgiving is coming up and you want to be armed with all the facts you can when you go and have those wonderful political discussions over the dinner table. So first, one of the most important things I think you need to know is that, sorry you guys can't see the bottom because I made them really big so that it would be punchy, but the United States is the #1 destination of migrants worldwide. So it's not just that there's a lot of migration worldwide, as you can see, even in the Americas from the previous presentation. We are the #1 destination. We have been for a number of years, and we completely separate the other countries. So if you go down the road, it's Germany, Russia, Saudi Arabia, UK, UAE, Canada, France, Australia, and Spain. And we are receiving more than any of those other countries by a huge margin. That's because of the economic opportunity we have here, the freedom that we have here. People want to be Americans, they want to come and contribute. This is the number over time of the foreign population in the United States. And so this is one of those contentious things. If you hear debates about this, a lot of people think we're being overrun by immigrants. And in numbers terms, they're not necessarily wrong. There are a lot more immigrants than we've had in the past. But as a percentage, we're not really that far off in terms of historical norms. So the line is the absolute number, and the bars are the percentage. You can see we're at about 13.5% of our population is foreign-born. That's on the high end, but it's not unusually high, and it's definitely not the highest it's ever been. This is about the number of foreign-born who are employed versus the native-born. As you can see, the foreign-born punch above their weight. The labor force participation rate is higher. This is part of the economic argument for allowing more immigration. There are people who come here, they want to contribute, they want to work, they don't have to work. And so this is what they do. They are a bigger part of our labor force in terms of their overall population than the native-born. This is reflected here as well. We just mentioned that the number of foreign-born in the United States is about 13.5%, but 17% of our civilian labor force. So they're punching above their weight in terms of the size of the population. Being part of the civilian labor force is a really important part of the job creation because while it's great to have a public sector workforce that works for all of us and have a stable job and a pension, those people aren't the job creators. The private sector is where the jobs are created. So we have a high percentage of foreign-born in the civilian labor force, and we also know that they are more entrepreneurial. Their small business creation rate is about double that of native-born Americans. These are the people creating jobs in the United States. For this slide is from 2006 to 2016. You can see the number of workers created in each category in that 10-year period. In that decade, nearly 45% of our labor force, new entrants, were foreign-born. So if we didn't have those immigrants, we would have had a lot smaller labor force. We would have had a lot fewer workers to fill the jobs, and our economy would have shrunk. This is really, really important slide. So if you want to have a workforce that can support your population, it's good to have the blue side, the one that looks like a pregnant person, because that is the vast majority of your population being of prime working age. So you are working, you're paying taxes, you're contributing, and there are fewer people on either end that cannot work and that need to be supported. The orange side is native-born. We're a little bit straighter, so we don't have as many working age people supporting the people who are going to be in our retirement population. We don't have as many supporting our children. Immigrants help make us younger in terms of prime working age. It's really important for the overall health of our economy. So you also hear a lot, and one of the things I will show you in a little bit is one of the things you hear about is merit-based immigration. We need to switch to a merit-based system, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think that when you look at the economic statistics, almost every study bears out that if you increase the number of skills-based immigrants, you will increase the growth of the economy and it will accelerate faster. But in the current system we already have, one of the things that's really interesting is even though most people are coming via a family member, because we have a very family-based immigration system, 45% now have bachelor's degrees. So we know that even though they're not coming in because of their jobs, they're not coming in because an employer recruited them, they're still way more educated than they were in the past. And that's really important as we design an immigration system moving forward and pursue immigration reform. And as you can see, it's not just bachelor's degrees. More foreign-born have advanced degrees than the general population. That's important for things like innovation and patents, and if you're going to monetize a patent. And the United States is typically the leader in these things. We develop the cancer remedies, we develop the good engineering breakthroughs, we do all of those things, and a lot of that is driven by our foreign-born population. So why do we need immigration reform? I said before, I think immigration is pro-growth economic policy. Every study bears out, whether it's the Congressional Budget Office analyzing a new immigration, or the Wharton School of Business recently did a really cool illustration where you can change up the mix of future immigrants and the number. And all of these studies confirm that if you increase the number of immigrants we allow into the United States, you're going to see increased GDP growth, you're going to see job creation, you're going to see lots of really positive benefits for the economy. And if you increase the skills-based side, that's going to go up too. So we know from the slide that immigrants are important in the economy. We know if we were to increase, we could help accelerate economic growth. But what do we have right now? We have a system that hasn't fundamentally overhauled since the 1960s. We limit the number of people who can come in per country per year, creating huge backlogs. While we do have a family-based system that has its merits, it does shortchange industry in a way. So if you are a business that's growing and thriving and you can't find a workforce that works for you, it's very difficult to use the skills-based immigration system that we currently have to find a worker. The temporary worker visa program is inadequate. It's either unworkable, doesn't allow enough visas, so if you are a farm looking for temporary farm laborers, it's a very difficult system to use. In addition, if you have the type of agricultural enterprise that's not seasonal, you can't get a worker out of that program because they're only seasonal workers. So if you own a dairy farm, sorry, if you have an age your cows aren't going to get milked when they need to go home, which we all know will be quite uncomfortable for the cow and not good for any of our kitchen tables. Growing factors worldwide, our system does not accommodate the things that were talked about in the prior presentation. When you have the asylum seekers coming in, that we do, some of them are not just coming because of fear of persecution, but coming because they lack economic opportunity at home. Our system doesn't accommodate that. That's why they're coming and claiming asylum, because they have no other legal means of coming here, and they want to come here and work. And then the biggest pull factor of all, pull factor is something that drives people here. You hear a lot that it's our entitlement programs, it's our benefits. It's not. The biggest pull factor we have is that we have a great economy. We have a low unemployment rate. And so when you see seasonal dips in the illegal immigration rate and the border crossing rate, what you're really seeing is a reflection of the fact that we may not have jobs available. So when our economy is good, those numbers tend to tick up. So these are our recommendations. We think we need to increase immigration to grow the labor force and to mix up the mix. A few less on the family side, a little more on the skills-based side to stimulate that growth engine that we talked about. Improve temporary worker visa system. If we have worker visas that attach to workers instead of to their employer, that's really important because it gives the worker the ability and empowers them to change jobs. They currently can't change jobs on a temporary worker visa. So if they have an employer that's not scrupulous, that is underpaying them, they will have the ability to work that job and still be able to stay in the United States and make the wages that they want to make. Create a pathway to earn citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Didn't talk about any of that in the previous slides. Have a number of reasons that I think that's very important. One of which is that if you want to create stable communities with people who have buy-in to our institutions, it's really important that you give them the opportunity to fully participate. So if they're willing to be here and jump through the hoops that Congress puts forth and earn their right to be here, we ought to give them the opportunity to do that and be full participants in our society. And then fifth, enhance the enforcement of immigration laws. It's not enough to have a robust legal immigration program. You also have to have robust enforcement. And enforcement takes many forms, and it needs to be smart and targeted. But if you don't have both working together, you don't have a system that's going to be functional. So this leads us to Central America. We heard some about what's going on in the Northern Triangle from the previous presentation. And so one of the things that we done at the Bush Institute is we looked at that and said, we think we can do something about that. So we brought together this wonderful group of people from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, and put them in a room together and said, we need you to work on the problems that are facing your countries. What works? What are you already doing? Where are the reforms already happening? What's next? How can you implement this? Where are the lessons learned? And so they came up with a recommendation that we've taken to Capitol Hill and had a reception in Congress. And it seems kind of small, but we like that. We like to call it narrow in scope and broad impact. Digitization of government. There's not a lot of technological infrastructure in place in the Northern Triangle that allows things that we take for granted every day. There's no Venmo. There's no ability to register your business that you want to start online. There's no direct deposit of wages. And so without those things, you end up with, it limits the ability of people to advance themselves. You have a large underbanked population. You have a large informal economy. And so some of the things that a digital strategy can accomplish are here. But basically, we think that doing something like this will not only ease commerce and allow the businesses that are there to really join the global economy in a way that they haven't been able to, but also will increase transparency in government, which is important. It will decrease corruption because there will be an actual digital paper trail. There will be receipts of where the payments are going, and it'll be secure payments. You'll be able to know that when you're paying your taxes, it is actually going to the government and no one's lining their pockets with it. That's going to increase the rate of people paying their taxes. It's going to increase the uptake of the benefits that there. It's not the solution to all problems, but it is a small piece that we think will help go a long way to increasing economic opportunity. Because we believe that I would love to have any worker that wants to come here and be an American and contribute to our economy, but I don't want people to have to leave because they have no other options. If they can thrive where they are, we should give them the opportunity to do that. And it's not just about foreign assistance, it's about us doing what we can to help them help themselves, and that's what this is. We're very excited about this program. Thank you.
Great, so we're going to transition to the panel portion of our afternoon. I'm going to take a seat here, and I'm going to call, before that I should introduce myself. I am Curtis Escobar, the Associate Director of the Latino Leadership Institute. Really proud to be here. I will be facilitating our panel. So we have some scripted questions, a couple for each panelist, and then we'll open it up for discussion. We have two additional panelists here. I'm going to read their bios and go ahead and join me on stage as I read, and then Trevor and Laura will have you come up afterward. Okay? So our next panelist who we will hear from quite a bit this afternoon is Consul Berenice Rendon Talavera, who's the Consul General of Mexico. She served in this position in Denver since 2017. It's actually an office that's been in existence here in Denver. Anyone know how long? Yeah. 1893, yes. A very important office that deals with all issues and relations with Colorado and the eastern part of Wyoming and Montana, fostering those relations on the political, economic, trade, cultural, and educational exchanges, along with social affairs. The consul is a member of Mexico's Foreign Services, which she's been since 1977. She was first posted to the Consulate General in Boston and to the Embassy of Mexico in Cuba. As the Foreign Affairs Secretary, she served in the Departments of Consular Affairs, the Department for Europe as Chief of Staff at the Undersecretary for International Cooperation and Consular Affairs, as well as Chief of Staff at the Undersecretary for Europe, Asia, and Africa. She has served as Head Consul of Mexico also in Brownsville, Texas, and in Las Vegas, Nevada. Great, so welcome. Thank you for being here. And our last panelist we introduced briefly earlier is Maria Garcia-Berry. Maria is the founding partner of CRL Associates. She launched this Denver firm in 1981 with a commitment to strategic, insightful government and public affairs. Maria is well known for her ability to navigate complex issues, always striving to find a productive solution that benefits each party involved. Her reputation extends well beyond her home state of Colorado. Maria is often invited to consult and present on topics such as partnership building, on topics such as public transit development and creative public-private partnership building. She has a personal passion for mentorship and entrepreneurship. She's highly active in the Cuban American communities in Denver and across the country. In addition to serving on the Biennial of the Americas Board, which we noted earlier, he also serves on the boards of the Cuba Emprende Foundation, the Cuba Study Group, and the Latino Leadership Institute at the University of Denver. Welcome, Maria. And Trevor, come on up. And the mic should be on, so we should be ready to go. Great. So while Trevor is walking up, I actually have the first question for him. He has the hard job. Trevor, we'll start with you. You ended your presentation talking about your latest report by emphasizing that properly understood and managed migration represents not only a challenge for the U.S., but an opportunity. Speak more to the opportunities that can result from positioning the U.S. as a global leader on migration management in the Americas.
Is this, yeah. Well, of course, and for answering, I should say that Laura's presentation, in many ways, I'm quite grateful that she has stolen my thunder in this respect. She outlined many of the very compelling reasons why the United States historically has and continues to depend on immigrants in order to keep its economy thriving. I mean, I think it's just a question of demographics that while we're not necessarily seeing demographic trap as some countries in Northeast Asia or Western Europe, that the United States is going to need immigrants in order to sustain a robust economy going forward. I think that they have and will continue to play a very important role in innovation, but on the labor force more broadly. And I think that until we're willing to reorient the discussion around immigration to recognize that actually there's a demographic need and a benefit to immigration, we're not going to be very well positioned to obtain the benefits that a more rational, thought out, and focused immigration policy would bring us.
Great, thank you. Laura, some of your work at the Bush Institute focuses on advancing policies that promote U.S. economic growth and strengthening our global economic competitiveness. Can you speak on how cooperating with and enhancing the capacity of Central American partners and Mexico is of national interest for the U.S.?
When our neighbors thrive, we benefit. So it's not just about their economic opportunity for those people have the opportunity to thrive where they are. But when you do have a lack of economic opportunity, widespread corruption, lack of transparency in government, it's not just that we end up having to bear the load of people coming in. It creates instability and security challenges in those countries, and you're only safe with people that is. So to the extent that we can work together with our neighbors and have regional approaches like you talked about, that is a positive for all of us. And that's one of the things we do know. You mentioned this briefly, but I don't think people quite appreciate that the infrastructure in place in a lot of countries is not nearly as good as ours for handling asylum claims. So I think Mexico, and you probably know these stats better than me, but Mexico, I think, only has something like 20 asylum officers for the whole country 2 years ago, when they're receiving all of these migrants, some of whom were already trying to obtain asylum here. With the news about the deal with El Salvador and the country there, where we're requiring migrants transiting from El Salvador to apply there, they have one asylum officer in a country that already has difficulty taking care of its own people. So we have a structure in place that understands how to deal with asylum seekers. We're not perfect. We do have work to do to get up to speed, particularly when we have Russian people. But we really need to have a conversation about how we involve Canada in this as well, because Canada has a really robust refugee resettlement program. They're really good at this. They know what they're doing. And even though they're pretty far, they are part of the Americans as well. And so they need to be part of the conversation. It's not just about our southern neighbors. And you saw this start to happen, less about migration and more just about general national security during the Bush administration with the Security and Austerity Partnership. That really faded into the background once that administration was over. And so that's something that we need to talk about. How do we use the structures that we already have in place to promote those types of policies?
Thank you. So a little bit about our northern neighbor. Now we'll go a little more talking to our southern neighbor. So Consul Rondon, you have stated in the past about how Mexicans are migratory by nature. When it comes to migration, what is working and what is not working from Mexico's perspective?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the invitation again. Well, we have to see from the perspective in two ways. One is the migration into the United States, Mexican migration, the immigrants that are already here or coming, even is lower than the time as it was mentioned before. And the other part is what is going on with Central America, but it's not only Central America. We have at the border, southern border, not only Central Americans or Latin Americans. We have people from Africa, from Asia, because Mexico has been a country that has received immigrants all the season as all the Americans. But in the last century, we received the Spaniards, we received the war, the World Second, we received I don't know how many people. And by the way, we have more than 1 million Americans living in Mexico, and we don't ask for documents in general. We're not building anything more than the way. But the other thing is, so that's what is not working regarding the Central American coming through Mexico, because we are also a transient country. So if we have talked about that, the United States hasn't been capable or doesn't have the capacity for the inflow of immigrants from all over the world, and they don't want to come to the United States. Very few stay in Mexico, even though Mexico is offering very importantly asylum and jobs in Mexico. They don't want to stay in Mexico, what they want is to stay here, is to come to the U.S. because they have families, and because there's always opportunities in this country. So that's the other part that is not important. You don't have without to come, so you have to do whatever is possible for many families. But if there is a reform or whatever it's called, the immigration system in the U.S. that will help a lot. But Mexico also is addressing the issue through the new compact for global migration that was negotiated with the United States in the United Nations, and Mexico was one of the sponsors, because we need to have international cooperation, as it was mentioned. It's not only regional, it's all over the world. Germany had some political problems even because of that, or 2 years ago, because the immigration dynamics nowadays are different than what it used to be. So Mexico and other countries, Mexico and Switzerland, were the countries sponsoring this global compact for migration and United Nations. It was approved by the countries. The United States did participate, of course, but that compact addresses the issues of treat people as people, respect human rights, go to the sources of migration, and try to solve them with international cooperation.
Thank you. Maria, as a Cuban immigrant, you have a very unique and personal first-person perspective on migration, a complex issue. Share a little bit about your experience as a product of Operation Peter Pan, maybe talk a little bit about that in the 1960s and how that has shaped your views about migration policies.
So for those of you who are Operation Peter Pan, it's called Peter Pan. There was a press in 1960 from Brian Walsh, who became acquainted with a young man who had been sent over by his family during the right post-Castro. Unaccompanied minors, Cuban children, to come to the United States and figure out a way to offer them some support. Between 1960 and 1962, 14,000 unaccompanied minors left Cuba. I was one of them. And they came to the United States, believing that if they came to the United States, their parents would get first priority in getting visas to the United States for them to come over. It's actually a very interesting story. And they're very, very different people. Former Mayor Guillermo Vidal here in Denver was also an Operation Peter Pan product. He wrote an interesting book called Boxing for Cuba. If you get a chance to read it, it's very interesting. Unlike he and I describe our immigrant experience as following, his family showed up to the airport to pick him up, mine did. So I ended up living in Florida for 5 months or 6 months with there were 3 boys, and they didn't have anything. So they ended up going to an encampment in Opa-locka, Miami, or Florida, and then going to an orphanage in Pueblo, Colorado, and then going into the foster care system in the United States until their parents came 3 years later or 4 years later. I think for me personally, as my parents voluntarily, to come to this country, and it was really painful, and I still remember it like it was yesterday, right? Not to belabor the point, but I was taken down by the military police because they thought I was smuggling. I was 8 years old, right? I was smuggling something. And so I remember that very vividly. I can't fathom any government taking children away and separating them, which is unfortunately what's happening today, which is the craziness of the immigration policy that we have. So for me personally, it's a very personal story. It's something that I went to El Paso in March, and we did the story. The reality of life is, and I think both Trevor and Laura spoke to it in different ways. If you feel that your family is at risk, the first thing you will do is try to save your children. And you will move them across in whatever means. Marcela de la Mar and I were in El Paso, then we showed up to an Annunciation House, which is where right after ICE releases immigrants that are allowed to stay, they go there first. And we helped do a census because, of course, we're bilingual and we're fluent. And you can see as we were going through it that some of those children really were not their parents, were their parents. It's whoever they could take to get their child across to the United States to be able to do it. Our thought that we would separate those children from the family who can come across, I think is inhumane and should not be allowed. But unfortunately, it does happen of our whatever fear that an 8-year-old is going to do something horrible in this country. So from that perspective, it changed. And I think after all this year, I was very lucky. I was reunited with my family. My parents came 6 months later. There are lots of stories, and to this day, it still impacts how you behave as a human being as you go through that experience.
Thank you for that. Consul Rendon, we'll go back to you. You've had experience working not just in various states here in the U.S., you also served as ambassador of Mexico in El Salvador. In your opinion, what is missing from the conversation on immigration, maybe more on a global level?
Yes. Well, I think one point in the U.S. is how to address the need for workers, because mentioned already before. So here in Colorado, we know that they need ag workers, they need for the mountain ski resorts, they need people, and construction. I went to Wyoming last week, and they are bringing construction workers out of Kansas and Texas and Colorado into Wyoming, because all over the place, this country is growing, and the first sign of growth is construction, and we need construction workers. But there's no way of so that's what is missing, I think, for the United States regarding the needs of the workforce, as it was mentioned, is an older population in the U.S., etc., etc. That has been said a lot also, but there's no reform, there's no ways of solving this problem. And on the other part, well, Mexico is trying to be very, to address the issue with empathy, now that you're talking about this, creating a program for Central America, especially Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, which is the plan for integral development. And Mexico actually is giving money to the 2 countries. Right now, Mexico has allocated $100 million, which for Mexico is a good effort to try to address the reasons why people are leaving these countries, mainly because there's no opportunities. So there's 2 programs for youngsters, for the youth. It's Jóvenes Creando Progreso, or something like that. Youngsters Creating Progress, and also Sowing Life, Sembrando Vida. And that's for the rural areas. So we are addressing two issues. The rural areas with the impact of the climate change affecting people already, and also for youngsters because they are the ones that are more at risk because of violence and pandillas and everything. So, but Mexico needs, cannot do it by itself, of course. Mexico has its own problems. So we are gathering the cooperation from the international community, and we need the United States to cooperate in that effort also, because it's not going to be solved by Mexico, of course, and even along the countries themselves. So we need cooperation. Right now, the United Nations and the European Union are already committing to these projects in Central America through the program created by Mexico.
Very much a global issue, and global participation is absolutely needed. Maria, you touched on this a bit earlier. Perhaps expound more deeply. How do you think the U.S. can benefit from having a well-functioning, number one, humane, number two, and more durable immigration system?
And I want to be voting for Christmas. Well, actually, Laura's slide, for those of you who have seen Hamilton or have read the script or have listened to the music, my favorite line in the whole damn play is when the Marquis de Lafayette and Alexander Hamilton are only talking to each other, just finally going to go into battle, right? And the line is, immigrants, we get the job done, right? That is what needs to happen in this country. And actually, your slides talk about that, because that is exactly what happens in this country, right? If it's not for immigration, we are not going to have an ongoing productive workforce. I think also, I want to address some of the humane thing. I think that one of the things that we have to have a rational immigration policy that makes sense is also to actually get the maximum out of the people who are here. I don't think you give so much of yourself and get involved in your community if you're afraid that someone is going to knock on your door and the next thing you know, you're going to find yourself in an ICE facility and be deported. And I think one of the things that has happened, humans for a long time, and this is where I by the way oppose this, was a privileged class because we had what is called wet foot, dry foot. Didn't matter what we did at the minute that we had a wet foot someplace and we had a dry foot someplace, we got automatic asylum status. All because of 1960s Cold War issues and whatever. Obama appropriately suspended that when he was president, but at the same time opened up relationships with Cuba, which you have to do in a different way. But I think what happened, I was reading the other day that for the first time in a long time, a series of Cubans were deported. One who had been here for 52 years. Somebody's been living here for 52 years, but we're going to deport them. And I think what happens, if our workforce truly depends on immigration, which it does, and it has to do, in order to get the maximum out of the people, we should give them, for God's sakes, peace of mind that tomorrow they're not going to find themselves on the way to their homeland where they may face all the things that they left.
Thank you. So Laura, we're going to switch a little bit to the economic components of migration and immigration. From your perspective, what is the economic cost of not getting sensible immigration laws passed?
I'm actually going to flip this a little bit, and I'm going to talk about more of the fiscal cost of, because we hear this a lot, just enforce laws. The fiscal cost of enforcing current immigration laws is really, really big. If you were to fully enforce current immigration laws and deport all the undocumented, it would cost $400 to $600 billion. It would take 10 to 20 years, depending on your detention capacity, and assuming that you have enough capacity in the courts to process all the people who are going to fight that deportation order, and you're going to lose about 6% of your workforce. So you're talking about a really big contraction, and that's just not reasonable. It doesn't make sense for us to plunge ourselves into a recession just because you don't like the way someone either entered or remained in the United States. So, this conversation, I think, focuses too much on things that aren't possible. It's just not possible to really do that. And a politician who promises that to you probably doesn't really believe it either. It's just a talking point because they want to seem tough when there are lots of other ways that we can do this. And I actually want to, you talked about wet foot, dry foot. I think one of the things that also is missing in this conversation is immigration policy isn't just about economics, it's not just about community, it's how we interact with the rest of the world. And we have historically used immigration policy as a signal to other countries. So if you are from Cuba or from Vietnam, we were taking you in and making sure that you have the ability to become an American. And in its own way, other programs do that. Our international student program, where we bring in college students from other places, really exports Western values because those people are talking to their families back home. They may even go back home to work. And all of a sudden, all the things that they were exposed to here start to take root in their own way at home. And so, not everybody agrees with exporting Western values. It's controversial, but it is something that we have always done through immigration policy. And so, to the extent that you want to have a world focused on freedom, economic opportunity, those are things that we do through immigration policy.
Great, thank you. I appreciate how you flipped that question as well. So one of the opportunities we have today here at the biennial, in general, in talking about migration, is helping people really develop a better framework for addressing migration flows and talking about the drivers. Trevor, given the extensive amount of work you and CAP, the Center for American Progress, have done on this topic, what should everyone here today take away when they think about addressing migration flows?
Well, I think it has to be understood first and foremost as a long-term challenge. These drivers of migration didn't appear overnight, and they're not going to go away overnight. Climate change, unfortunately, is here to stay, barring a true political or engineering breakthrough. Likewise, there's hope for violence. El Salvador has had some promising upward trends recently, but there's going to be a rather dramatic rehabilitation of society accompanied by a whole new range of economic opportunities and institutional reform in order for places that are particularly plagued by violence to return to anything like stable and habitable places. I do think that the best short-term sort of focus is likely in the corruption impunity space, because that's something where there is a lot of good work being done out there. There's a tremendous popular demand in countries for reform, and historically there has been bipartisan support, global support for anti-corruption interventions. Fortunately, the current administration has allowed the Guatemala's Anti-Corruption Commission, which is perhaps the most successful anti-corruption experiment anywhere in the world, to shut down. But I think that that if I were that could be solved in the shorter term, that would be something to focus on. But regardless, these are serious problems. They're not going to be understood overnight. So it's going to require a cooperative approach that is a whole of society. The U.S. can only do so much, even though it can do a lot. It's going to require, and I really appreciate the private sector in many of these countries. It's going to require sort of forcing many leaders' feet to the fire in order to make necessary reforms and look after their citizens. But even with all that being done, we're talking about a pretty long sort of forecast as to when these drivers sort of edge to one of being more manageable. We're not seeing sort of high levels of asylum seekers we have today. So in the meanwhile, you also have to have structures in place so that migrants or would-be migrants can be processed and have their claims heard humanely. Obviously, that means the U.S. sort of having a more humane approach and increasing its resources. But as Laura was saying, I think it also means improving the capacity of countries through which migrants might transit. So, I wish I had a sort of a simpler, more elegant answer, but it's a bit of like everything in the kitchen sink that's going to have to come together in order to sort of to transform the migration situation. And that's just what we're talking about Central America. When we're talking about Venezuela, I think we have to understand that it's a generational problem. To Colombia or to Peru, they think that they're not, most of them are applying for asylum. And many of them have hopes that they'll return soon. But if you look at the trend lines in that country, again, barring this political breakthrough, things could very much get worse. And so that's something where we need to be thinking about contingency, be thinking about multilateral deal with 3 million people. I mean, that's the equivalent of 20 million people just showing up in the U.S. So what it really requires a whole of government approach to that can spur a whole of society response in these countries that are producing large outputs.
Excellent, thank you. Consul Rendell, so tomorrow morning you get a chance to advise the United States on migration policy. Right, we're gonna role play here for a minute. What would you say in terms of how can the U.S. more directly address the root causes driving migration flows from Central America? You had that opportunity, what would you share?
Well, first, don't see the world. That's the first thing I have to say. Well, it's related to what I already mentioned, I think, is cooperation. Because you're not going to, the United States is not going to solve any problem by trying to force the third country to anyone, because the reality of the countries won't, it won't work. We have a very porous border with the United States, 2,000 miles or less. But in the south, even the border is very small, the northern border, it's even more porous because it's easier to cross. There are so many ways to cross the border into Mexico. But then you have the dynamics of Central America. El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua have an agreement for free transit within the 4 countries. So there's no way that Guatemala is going to stop anyone, not even Guatemalans, but yes, Salvador, Nicaragua. But the region is receiving Africans, the Middle Easterns, Cubans, there's a lot of Cubans, because how it works, in reality, how it works is whenever there's a group of persons that want to leave, if they know that there is a way of going through these routes, I will take it. Cubans have done a lot of that with Mexico. They get to Mexico because of the policy of Pieza Copiamojado. If you enter through land, it's easier to get asylum controls for religious food. But if you are Haitian trying to come into the United States by the sea, you're not going to get it because you have to go through water. So those policies are not working anyway. So it has to be through regional cooperation to address the drivers of immigration as a revolution.
Absolutely. Regional of the Americas is the key takeaway there. Thank you. So our last question before we open it up to the audience goes to Maria. As a board member of the biennial, why do you believe it's imperative for us to have these types of conversations? And what would you like our audience to know about the work the biennial is doing to address some of the concerns we've talked about today relative to immigration and migration?
Can you hear me? There we go. Got it. So I think it's really important, the biennial was inspired actually in Miami by one then Mayor John Hickenlooper, Stephen Scott here, our treasurer and board member, he invited me to be on the biennial board. But I think it's important. Miami is Miami. But if you go to Miami and we were all taking a tour, we were going through the art museum and we were just amazed at the works that they had. And the executive director of the art museum gets up in front of us and starts telling us that, well, the reason they've done so well is because every time there's a revolution in Latin America, they benefit. Because immediately somebody wants to take something out of the country and be able to do that, and a lot of people start migrating, and they may decide to migrate their art first, or whatever it is. But what was very interesting is, and being Cuban, I'm on the anti-embargo side of life, so that would be, I'm not a hardliner, that's how they describe it, whatever. In Miami, you can take your life at risk if you start having a conversation about losing the embargo, right? I think what the inspiration was, which I really believe in, which is why I wanted to join the board, is Colorado is actually a safe place to be able to enter into civic dialogue about these very complicated issues. We don't have a border. Mexico, fighting against people, right? But we're not a fear of that, but we don't have a border where we have the issue there. So we can be a little bit more detached. We also have great cultural history. We had a governor who, when California and Japanese Americans were being put in camps in California, he welcomed Japanese Americans to come to Colorado and said that they would not be prosecuted. And so we have an interesting history to be able to do it. What the biennial tries to do, and the inspiration for the biennial, which I love serving on the board so much, is to be able to have these very hard discussions. The fact that we have two institutions here who may not be politically aligned on other issues, but in fact can have a conversation about migration and try to find some common ground. That's what we really need. And to do it in a civic process with civic dialogue, where we don't have to feel like you can't speak up and whatever because someone will shame you somehow to express your opinion. I think that's really the ethic.
So, thank you. So we're going to open it up to our audience for questions. I think we have a mic running. Please introduce yourself and address the particular panelist or the whole panel with your question. Right back here.
Hello, my name is Skip Canal. I'm a resident here of Colorado, and this question is for Trevor, but it's a bit wonkish. Your statistics showed the apprehended numbers, and apprehension technically is very sensitive to policy. Can you guesstimate the size of the unapprehended migration?
So the slide that followed the one that showed the apprehensions was, I should have been a little more clear about it. That was a study from the Pew Research Center that was attempting to estimate the number of undocumented living in the country, thus not apprehended. It's obviously a very challenging statistic because there's great peril in cooperating with researchers. So I honestly, we could go back to the slide. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number, but do you know off the top of your head?
A percentage-wise, like 10 or 200?
Are we talking about percentage of total immigrants or percentage of the U.S. population?
Say for every person who is apprehended, there are 10 who get through, say, that are unapprehended.
I don't have a good answer. I've heard, and this is not scientific, I've heard that sometimes that Border Patrol estimates they only catch 1 in 3, but I don't know how accurate that is, given that so many of the people crossing now are families who come across and then immediately try to find a Border Patrol agent. So I think that might have been a more accurate statistic when it was mostly single males of primary age, because they were trying to evade Border Patrol because they weren't going to declare asylum. But I don't think anyone has a really good grasp on how many we don't catch.
Well, Laura makes a really excellent point, which is that the meaning of apprehension has changed a fair bit in the last 5 years because 10 or 20 years ago, most people were trying to cross clandestinely and participate in the informal economy. They did not want to be detected. And so you could imagine that there were, and this is totally conjectural, but it's the reasonable assumption that the ratio of people who were apprehended to those who weren't would be higher than it is now, when in fact, apprehension literally means someone turning themselves in to U.S. authorities because they want to make asylum claims.
Yep.
When I was consul in Brown, Texas, right? That was so 3 times. But what they also know and sometimes don't recognize is that you apprehend someone, send it back, and that was for all the operations at the border. You apprehended one, send it back to Mexico, but they will try to go back 2 or 3 times. So there's no numbers, and sometimes are the younger people. They are there's a population of younger people at the border that enters, go in and out. So the numbers of the border patrol sometimes were very high, but it didn't. It wasn't the reality because of the circularity, and that used to be before. When I arrived in Brownsville, they started Rio Grande, and the border patrol was beefed up with so many agents that it was less and less, and it has been less and less possible to cross without being apprehended because of all the enforcement or the reinforcements of the border patrol all over the border.
Yeah, since 2007, we've really beefed up enforcement, not just in physical barriers, but in personnel and a lot of technological change, so we can actually observe what's happening on the border and border patrol that responds, even if they're not there at the moment. And then also, you have to take into account that, I lost my train of thought on this one. I had something to say. It's biometrics. We take biometrics now, so we do actually know sometimes if someone's a multiple crosser, and so it's still, I think they count multiple times, but we know sort of a little bit better about who's coming in and out.
Just to follow up, if one of the implications of your question was whether the notable decrease in apprehensions was a reflection of a diminished efficacy of apprehending undocumented migrants, I don't think anyone would support that conclusion. I do think the overall belief is that there are far fewer people trying to cross.
Next question?
This is, I'm Ann Smith here in Denver. This is for anybody who wants to comment. The Organization of American States has baffled me most of my life. And I would really appreciate some insight in the context of this because it reads really well. But I don't see, it's hard to determine how it's not more of a solution. And I totally admit my ignorance because it's very hard to understand from the outside, but can you just comment on the place in contemporary of the Organization of American States and if it's part of the hopeful inter-American system, and are there ways that we need to be more aware of that? Because it's a very present non-presence to me, is what it feels like.
I'll take a shot at it from the Cuban perspective. The appointments from the United States to the OAS right now are part of the creation of the narrative of the 20,000 people. I am not, and don't misunderstand this, I'm not saying that what's happening in Venezuela is right, because it's not. And Venezuela is in very, very deep distress. But the unfortunate appointments, I think unfortunately the OAS mirrors the reflection of whoever is the chief executive that appointed the individuals. And right now, speaking very personally on the Cuba front, a lot of the rollback of progress we made over the last 10 years in trying to foster some Cuban dialogue has totally been reversed because of the appointments made to the OAS. It's a very, very hard to find Cuban immigrant who will not even engage in a dialogue other than it's a very black and white solution to this. This is not a person who would be fostering cooperation and dialogue in terms of solving regional issues.
So I'll just add, I don't know what in particular you find difficult to parse about the OAS, but I share your general sentiment. I will say that the OAS is the most robust regional organization that is out there. It is much more robust and effective than, for example, the ASEAN in Southeast Asia, than the African Union. I guess I'm leaving the EU out of this equation. But at the end of the day, it's a classic international institution problem that's only as effective as the political will of its members, and that changes. Migration is a very difficult issue, and people in the Americas don't see eye to eye on it. In particular, the current president of Brazil is unlikely, I think, to go along with a particularly constructive regional solution. And the United States, because it participates in the OAS, is obviously not going to. So the OAS is going to be its most successful when the countries that participate are governed by leaders who are committed to using the institution to drive its solutions. I don't think that's where we're at.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dalia Dorta. I'm Venezuelan, so I feel like I need to say something. One, we migrate not because we want to, never. That's a basic thing we should always say. We don't migrate because we want to. Never, ever. The other thing about Venezuela is going back to these and empathy that we're talking with these with Ailenio. We, as you said before, we have 2 million Venezuelans going to Colombia, but while the guerrillas were going in Colombia, we have 4 million Colombians in Venezuela. So now we see some empathy in these 2 countries that are going on. However, we don't see the same with other countries, as you mentioned. You know, for years when Pinochet, we had all the Chileans in Venezuela. When whoever was a dictator in any country would come to Venezuela, we were welcome. That's how we grew up, right? And yeah, and after the World War II, the same, Spaniards, Germans, French, Portuguese. So we are a country of immigration as well. But to me, what I find very strange, and not as strange, it's just so hard to understand that we are right there in the Caribbean. We're, you know, in front of everybody. Venezuela has become a melting pot of all the horrors in the world. We have Hezbollah. We have all these people from Middle East trading in Venezuela. We have all the interests from China and Venezuela. Russia, all the military says the U.S. doesn't provide any more military to Venezuela. We have everything from Russia. So that horrible melting thing is going on here. And it's not just a migration stuff. It's much more than that. And we don't see really something happen from the American Organization of States, from anyone. It's like, it seems like it's something that comes up and comes down, the interest, and it depends on the rhetoric of whoever is in power. So it's, I don't know, you might call it a migration thing, because yes, we are migrating, people are leaving, whoever can leave is leaving. And that is much more than that.
I can, and yeah, so I very much take your comments on board. I mean, starting with the point about Venezuela having taken in desperate people during tumult in other countries in South America, that is very much the case. I mean, I think it is underemphasized in narratives about what's happening in South America, just how exceptional Colombia has been in seeking to accommodate and take in Venezuelans. The fact that they've taken in such a vast number, like I said, one projection, I heard that the most aggressive projection could be 3.5 million Venezuelans in Colombia by the end of the year, which would be approaching, 8% of its population. Can you imagine that in the United States? That hasn't prompted a xenophobic backlash, but there's understanding and compassion. I think it's a really profound development that more people should be paying attention to about how you handle compassion. And yes, a lot of that does have to do with the fact that during the period of civil unrest, there were many Colombians in Venezuela. I do think that there is a lingering sense of gratitude for the country. Peru and Ecuador actually were pretty receptive as well, but then the usual narrative set in where one migrant committed a crime and then it was sensationalized, and the system began to get a little tighter, and now there are debates over it. And that's unfortunate. It's notable that Colombia has managed to escape that so far. And it's the sort of thing where I think the U.S. should be really supporting it and providing Colombia as much resources as they can. On your point about Venezuela, listen, Venezuela is unfortunately almost encyclopedic in the number of pathologies that are gripping that country today. The exodus of Venezuelans is simply just one manifestation of what's happening. I will not, I will not in any way defend the Maduro regime. He is an authoritarian, he is a strong dictator. He has also turned the country into a narco state. His cronies have enriched themselves on the backs of poor countries. They have literally made millions corruptly off the currency control systems that were meant to get medicine and poorly to the country for the populations. There's very little we can say. However, if when you say the OAS needs to sort of do something about it, I don't know if you're calling for intervention, military intervention of some kind. This is beyond the remit of this discussion, I think, but I would say that such a prospect is I think he bolted in Pandora's box and make other recent military interventions look simple by comparison. So I do think that the Venezuela situation is an exceptionally delicate one that and requires some humility. And also a lot of contingency planning for if the regime collapses.
Anyone else? We have time for a couple more questions, and then we probably need the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so open for networking if you wanted to talk to the panelists maybe individually as well. So a couple more. Yeah, that.
Sorry. My name's Brian. I'm on my mother's side. My mother was the daughter of the Revolution, but I'm a third generation American citizen. My great grandparents never had any desire to permanently stay in the United States. They always went back to Mexico. And in growing up, so many families were sending money back home. Do you think that this current effort of migration, what's going on with refugees and King, is a process where people are trying to send economic support back home, or is it more of a permanency?
Well, first I want to address your point about remittances, because I'm reading right now a book called A Good Provider is One Who Leaves, and one of the main tenets of that is surrounds this Filipino family who almost all members leave the country to work and send money back. And one of the points the book makes is that remittances alone globally are a better anti-poverty program than all foreign combined. So remittances are really powerful. I think what we see now is not just that people are leaving instability and lack of economic opportunity, but when you have a family situation where a worker is separated from the rest of their family, it creates an instability in the family, and people want to be with their loved ones. They want to reunite. So it's not just that you can leave and earn money to send home. We don't have the ability to go back and forth as a migrant very easily right now because we do have a hard border. So whether it's a lack of legal opportunity to come here, or a difficulty coming back and forth illegally, you just have a situation where if you're going to be here, you're going to stay, and so then you can bring the family because you're not going to be able to see them for several years otherwise. And we also have a system overrides this process by per-country caps being one of the main reasons. If we have a family-based system where you have 20 years to bring in your family, it's going to take 20 years before we even process your paperwork. If you're from the Philippines, if you're from India, if you're from Mexico, we're just incentivizing people to bring their family, to smuggle them in. And so I don't know that we have an answer as to what the goals are of these people, but we do see the patterns. We know what's happening. They do send a lot of remittances back to Central America. But they're bringing their families because they miss them. And because they don't want their family to live in a situation that they left because they were hurting themselves.
I also think at times the restrictions that countries do on themselves. So to take a few examples, none of my cousins could come because my cousins were male between the ages of 12 and 27. And so when the mass exodus started, Castro imposed rules that if you were a male between the ages of 12 and 27, you could not leave the country. So by necessity, a lot of the family couldn't leave because they weren't going to leave their young children. I'm one of the few female cousins, so all of my cousins stay. And so we sent remittances because of the Cuba Forum, remittances, the Trump administration just announced guidelines one more time on Cuba last week. They're restricting remittances to Cuba again. But remittances to Cuba are the largest economic generator into Cuba today. Far.
In the case of Mexico, it used to be very circular because, as you mentioned, your grandparents didn't want to stay here, they just want to come work and go back. That's the program and all what happened before. But since there was more enforcement of the law, immigration laws started getting harder, people didn't go back because it would be more difficult to come back, and they would bring their families. And in the case of the Central Americans, they are migrating family now. It's not that I go first and then you come. It's let's go everybody. So in the case of Central Americans, who knows? But I think what's very important that Nora mentioned, they need to workers' programs, because that's what we address all those issues. You come here, well, actually there are some programs for that, the H-2 visas, and in the case of Mexicans, there's a lot of Mexicans come to work, especially in the agriculture, landscaping. They come to work for 6 months and they go back to Mexico, come and go, they in the family or in the lab for the process of 20 years, waiting to see if they give you a visa. And in the case of Canada, because Canada has a very interesting program with Mexico, it's a temporary workers program to work in agriculture. Every year, 26,000 Mexicans go to work in Canada and go back. And so every year is the same. So there are ways to address all these issues, and that maybe will stop this family migration in this Mexico, Central America is another phenomenon. It's different from Mexico. And that's why also Mexicans are coming in or the rates of coming to the United States have been lower because of the economic situation in Mexico. There's more work, jobs, and etc. So that's what it's done.
Now go to the back. Thank you.
My name is Cheryl, and I everyone's comments. I feel like I've heard so much. Thank you. Trevor mentioned Guatemala as being having the most successful anti-corruption program, and of course that money has been, I think, completely shut down. Would you mind describing some, or would you please describe some of what those efforts entail?
Sure, absolutely. So the entity I was referring to is the Guatemalan Commission Against Impunity. CICIG is the Spanish acronym for it. It is a bit like an international tribunal, but it had a few features that I think was going to make it a bit of a killer app. It was sort of protected by the UN, sort of created by the UN, but it also was integrated into Guatemalan institutions. The head of it was a foreign international civil servant, but it could only develop cases, and it had to bring those cases to Guatemalan courts. So that it was charged simultaneously with doing investigations into political corruption and other, and also human rights violations. And at the same time, it had to build up and develop Guatemala's own institutions, both sort of developing really rudimentary police capacities like wiretapping and so forth, and also just developing an apolitical or insulated judicial system that could hear these high voltage claims. And it was a bit of a rocky start, and there's actually an absolutely fascinating New York article about one of the commissioners who staged his own suicide in order to implicate one of the people who's investigating. So it's not, I don't want to suggest that it's the history has been told in English. And if you ever should read that, it's a piece of journalism I've read. But anyway, Ivan Velasquez, the last commissioner, in conjunction with two very determined, high-powered attorney generals, that one done, the most notable one, made some really high-profile wins, including indicting the sitting president and vice president in connection with a customs fraud scheme. At one point, the institution was the most popular entity in the country, more popular than the Catholic Church. So it's a pretty extraordinary development in a country that had been totally captured by clientelistic networks arising out of the protracted civil war they had. A lot of the intelligence community, the military went underground, and just became involved in organized crime, essentially ran the government. So, it's CICIG. Anti-corruption is the other sort of thing I focus on, and CICIG there's so few success stories. There's so few cases where reforms stick. CICIG was something that both seemed to be changing the way the Guatemalan justice system worked, was very popular domestically, and seemed to be building some durable. However, the current president, it has always been a little bit, had a sword hanging over its head because no one in power likes it. So it was really only the political will of donor countries, and especially the United United States that sort of kept it from being washed. And finally, the last president decided last year that he was going to shut it down and take out the head of CC. And the only statement, or on that day when he made that announcement, I think Mike Pence tweeted, or maybe it was Pompeo, one of them tweeted that Guatemala is a valuable security partner where we count on for. So essentially, it's given sort of U.S. has given carte blanche to this sort of shut down of this institution, which is very unfortunate, and CC was not really. That's unfortunate, and I wish there was a better story to tell there, but I do think it did awaken it did two things. One, it showed that this model would be successful, and there have been efforts to recreate it in El Salvador and on Honduras. The one in El Salvador didn't have the same, it was, without getting into too much detail, it didn't have quite the same sort of institutional sort of powers that CICIG did. But it was better than nothing. But also, I think it awakened, and this is the real power of anti-corruption, awakened a real yearning on the part of the well-known people to see transparent and good governance. And I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle, so we'll see. What about Peru? No problem. Are you talking about the Odebrecht scandal in particular? Well, that's a whole other set of things. Yes, I do think that the typical of the Odebrecht scandal having taken out heads of state and cabinet ministers all across South America, I would say that other than migration, the greatest issue in Latin American regional politics is corruption. And they do relate to one another, particularly in places where highly corrupt governments have no incentive for people to stay at home and don't provide economic opportunity. But yeah, no, I mean, the reverberations of corruption scandals are shaping Latin American politics to its core. What happened in Brazil was in itself sort of the long delayed effects of the car wash scandal, which took down two governments and discredited the entire political establishment. We see what happens when people don't have faith in the political establishment on the left or right. They elect a populist outsider with very dubious views, but anything to shake up the system.
So we're going to go ahead and close. I know Emma, someone from Miami wanted to make an announcement. We'll do that in a second. But first, I really want to thank our panelists. Thank you for really giving all of us a real deep dive into an issue that you're not going to find if you just watch the news or read one or two articles. And there are so many challenges. The drivers are my big takeaway. And thinking about migration, talking about climate change, really global issues that are so much more than just thinking about the border and wherever that border might be. So thank you for that. So I think our panelists are going to stick around till about 6:30. We'll go ahead and make the announcement. If you want to, someone, okay, thanks.
Thank you, everyone, and especially a huge thank you to the Latino Leadership Institute. What an amazing opportunity for the biennial to have a really robust conversation around a difficult topic. One of the things I think the biennial is really good at and known for, and we want to continue to do, is that when we have conversations like this around tough ideas and topics, there's also another way to have a conversation about it, and it's through art. And our friends who are artists and creatives, they somehow manage to take these topics and put the conversation right there in front of you. And yet, I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to really take in the beautiful art that's the backdrop of this conversation. So we are delighted to be partnering with the Denver Art Museum and Suchitra Mutai, a local artist, and she was so gracious to allow us to have this beautiful backdrop. We have a piece of the art up here that will come up, and she's going to share with you just a few minutes about it, and hopefully you can see the really beautiful connection between this panel and your beautiful piece of work.
So, thanks for staying to listen to me talk about my work. I will be talking about this piece as soon as the video comes up. There's a video component. Again, my name is Suchitra, and thank you again to the biennial as well, the Denver Art Museum, for sponsoring this iteration of the project. What you're about to see about borders, which I think ties into what you've been talking about. My background is I'm from Guyana, South America. So physically a part of South America, but culturally very much a part of the Caribbean. So my ancestors were indentured laborers under colonial rule, and that's a period that I look to and research very much. So my work is intended that era as a means for contributing to dialogue today. A lot of the work I do, everything from painting and drawing to fiber and video, basically it takes into account historic objects. So whether I'm referring to something or actually using documents and objects that have had a history that contributes to my dialogue. So this work is called Imperfect Isometry, a very complicated title for a simple idea. It was originally commissioned this year by the Sharjah Biennial, which is in the United Arab Emirates. And the piece is made of vintage saris, the garb that Indian women wear, and they're from all over the world. So they're from India, from Sharjah, and also from my own family. And so the idea was to make a piece that thinks about diaspora, migration, and displacement. And what I wanted to do was connect these women over through time and over place, right? The second part, we'll come up in a second, but what I was thinking about was how political borders affect not just the political aspects of our lives, but also community and the individual. And so what you're seeing is a very abstract video of, let's say, contentious border walls around the world. So this is, I took video in Jerusalem, at the wall between Israel and Palestine. I also took video at the U.S.-Mexico border, and there's some clips of prison videos. I was talking to someone about how I collected these videos, and it was very awkwardly. I didn't have a permit or anything like that. I just knew that I wanted to collect video that articulated the sense of heightened, let's say, a heightened border. And so what you're seeing are very abstract and disorienting flips of each image. And the prison video kind of interjects to kind of think about what borders really are, what these political borders really are. So I don't want to do that, but if you have any questions about the piece, again, it's called Imperfect Isometry. Isometry is the idea of mapping, mathematical mapping. And I was really thinking about how, in a poetic way,